Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia. It's time to look ahead at the waiver wire for Week 9 in the NFL. We got a couple teams on a bye. We've got more injuries, as always, and we're bringing back a player that we talked about last week, but this time we are screaming from the rooftops after whispering, then telling last week. Now we're screaming and yelling about it. So get ready, get those earplugs in, because we've got some feelings, as the kids like to say. Before we get after it, I want to bring in my co-host here, my patty cakes, Pat Fitzmaurice, and of course, DBRO Derek Brown, the king of bros. Fitzy, a wild finish in Washington. Certainly fun. Is it just me, or does Jaden Daniels have that special thing that you just can't quantify?
That je ne sais quoi? Yes, I think he does, Joe. Quite a wild finish to that game. I was walking the dog and ran into my neighbor, who is a big Bears fan. He was not real excited about the end of that game. So yeah, and not a great moment for Tyreek Stevenson, like taunting fans as receivers were running toward him on that final play of the game. That was a wild finish. We had a bunch of really good finishes in Week 9. It was, what can you say? The NFL is a pretty good product.
Yeah, the 1 o'clock game certainly had a lot of games that came down to the wire at the end. The quad box, I think we had the octo box at one point too, over on the red zone. And DBRO, speaking of wacky finishes there, certainly we had the Lions. They covered. I think that was pretty easy one there. That one actually happened. But some of those other bigger numbers, not so much. Just ask the Ravens. And then, then there's the Jets, who are now 2-6. Last year, at this time, they were 4-4. What do you think about what you saw last week, where my Patriots somehow came out with a W?
I mean, come on. The Jets are just an abstract dumpster fire now. I mean, Aaron Rodgers gets the head coach gone. That doesn't help. They trade for Devontae Adams. That doesn't help. Aaron Rodgers being a GM and honestly playing quarterback right now doesn't help. It's going to be a very interesting stretch run to see if this team just fully implodes and the wheels come off and Aaron Rodgers just goes into a cave and never comes out.
Well, look, there's still time before the trade deadline. Maybe Devontae can find a way out to a contender. Who knows? Let's get to the waiver wire ad of the week. But first, free stuff, because we love to give away free stuff here on the show. Trophy Smack's teeny tiny loser belt is gone. We're giving it away already. Every week we do one of these here from Trophy Smack. So the winner this week is Peter. Peter, please get in touch with us at our customer support agents, mailbag@fantasypros.com. That's the place to go. So hit us up at mailbag@fantasypros.com with your mailing address, proof of your subscription to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel, and we'll get that shipped out to you right away. Again, Peter, it's like Cher or Madonna, just one name, Peter. Congratulations, you're the big winner. And that means with every Trophy Smack giveaway that goes away, a new one comes and takes its place. We're back to the Wall Smack giveaway yet again. We've teamed up with our friends at Trophy Smack to give away something truly epic this week, the large fantasy football wall smack of your choosing. These magnetic metal wall plaques aren't just art. No. They're statement pieces to let everyone know how passionate you are about fantasy football. So whether you're going for the sleek floating style or the bold poster style, Wall Smack's got you covered. So how do you win this? I'll tell you. Subscribe to the channel, drop your comments below, and ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications. That's it. That's how you enter to win the Wall Smack from Trophy Smack. And it can be yours. Again, Trophy Smack, the #1 destination for epic fantasy football trophies. All right, gentlemen, it's time yet again to talk about one of my favorite things. I feel like Oprah, the waiver wire pickup of the week. If you're watching the show on our live stream a couple weeks ago, we always try to pick up things that might slip through the cracks. Amari Cooper got traded. Tuesdays, 3 p.m. live stream. We do it every single week for waiver wire right here on the channel. I spoke about this player with Derek Brown. I said, you know what? Nobody's talking about Cedric Tillman. I really like Tillman as a prospect. Thought he was a good college player. Thought he kind of fits what could be, especially maybe down the road with Jameis Winston at some point if we got that. Well, it was crickets. Nobody really picked him up. Then last week, he had some all of a sudden stats and everyone goes, oh, whoa, this is really good. And we talked about him last week. So once again now, after a week where now he had 9 targets, 7 catches, 99 yards, and not 1, but 2 touchdowns, Cedric Tillman is now officially the waiver wire pickup of the week because, again, you weren't listening in the whisper campaign. You weren't listening when we were saying it out loud. So now we have to scream it and make him the waiver wire pickup of the week. DBRO, Cedric Tillman just might be that dude. And Winston, of course, with the very exciting pregame speech there, too, because you played for the names on the back of your jersey and the name on your helmet, except if you're the Cleveland Browns, in which case you have no logo.
Yeah, he said we played for the insignia on the helmet. He goes, wait, we ain't got no decals. Never mind. Go out there and just ball. And that's what Cedric Tillman did, man. Over the last 2 weeks, he is the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game. Yes, people, behind only CD Lamb. That's it. Behind only CD Lamb in fantasy points per game. It has been glorious. And this is why people need to tune into the show. You talked about him on the live stream 2 weeks ago, Joey. We discussed him on last week's show. We talked about him on the Sunday live stream and told everybody to play him.
Yeah.
Every question we fielded, we were like, okay, it's Tillman. It's Tillman. I had him as a top 32 wide receiver for the week. Wide receiver 30, if my memory serves right. And that still apparently was blasphemous. And it was awesome. Now, the one thing I do want to say with everybody getting out there and now trying to chase Cedric Tillman, the upcoming schedule for the Cleveland Browns is horrific. Like, after this game, they get the Chargers, then they get the Saints. That's awesome. But then the Steelers, the Broncos, and the Steelers, the Chiefs, it's a rough schedule moving forward. So I'm not telling people not to go out there and bid 12 to 15% to get Cedric Tillman. If you really need a wide receiver and you are hurting right now, I get if you're going up to 20%. That's fine. I'm not telling people not to do that. I'm just also going to say, with all of the hype and all the great production we've seen over the last 2 weeks, we also need to talk about the schedule, and it could be a little bit rougher or more rocky moving forward.
I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. But Pat, this guy is 24% rostered, which is a joke. Sunday morning, I looked at it and I couldn't believe he was one of the best streamers out there available all week, just on flat PPR volume. Even if he went 6 for 60, that would have gotten you double digits in a lot better situation in a week where we had a lot of injuries, a lot of suspicious starts. And then you had those late scratches like T. Higgins and some other guys like that kind of popped up last minute on us. 24% rostered. To Derek's point, yeah, the schedule might be a little tricky. But Pat, I have 2 words for you: reckless abandon. And that is Jameis Winston in a nutshell. So I'm okay with them being behind. I'm okay with them just throwing the ball lower. But that's what you saw this week against the Ravens yesterday. And I don't care if the Steelers are beating him in the fourth quarter. Garbage time Winston is my favorite. It's the best. I'm still on Tillman, and I'm still aggressive regardless at this point if he's still out there. Pat, the floor is yours.
Yeah, in defense of our viewers and listeners who might not have rushed out to grab Cedric Tillman in either the last 2 weeks, I kind of get it, because the Cleveland passing game was an oxygen-starved ecosystem for the entire season. I mean, there was just nothing to get excited about, and you had to buy into the premise that Jameis Winston was going to come in basically after being cryogenically frozen for 2 years. Like, he hasn't started since early 2022. But we are seeing very much what Joe Flacco did for the Browns passing game last season after he replaced Jameis Winston. We're seeing that replicated.
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson, sorry. We're seeing that replicated with a guy who is very much like Joe Flacco, late career, in terms of his playing style. A guy who will throw it downfield with reckless abandon, as you mentioned, Joe, which is going to lead to some interceptions. We almost didn't see that thrilling win for the Browns because Jameis threw one right into the hands of Kyle Hamilton, and he just couldn't catch it. Like, that game should have been over. The Ravens should have won that game. But look, I mean, even against good defenses, I think Winston's going to be dealing the rest of the way. And there might be games where, you know, Tillman gets short shrift on targets with Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore, although we've seen a lot of Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. And if it would have happened for those guys, if they were going to become like, you know, above average or star level receivers, it would have happened by now, and it hasn't. So I think there's an opening for Tillman to become the lead guy, the alpha receiver in this offense. And considering how much they're going to throw it around and how aggressive Winston is as a passer, it's pretty exciting.
Look, I played him in 3 of my leagues because I had to and also wanted to. And let's just say I was very glad that I did. So again, we practice what we preach over here with Tillman. And yeah, there's going to be some ugly mistakes with the Cleveland Browns offense. But I think the Flacco point is a great one, that it is going to be very similar, where it's going to be mistakes, but also some big game potential there. And I think you'll take that at this point in time. And if Jeudy and Elijah Moore, and those are the guys that everybody was talking about when the Cooper deal first started, and I just couldn't look, I said on this show, I was like, I'm not excited about Jerry Jeudy. I haven't been excited about him all year, no matter what anybody tries to tell me. If those guys were so great, some of those organizations that had them who were desperate for wide receiver help, I think would have held them. The fact that they jettison them tells you that there's flaws there. And Tillman is a guy that was drafted, and Tillman's a guy that has sat for a year and now all of a sudden has an opportunity. Speaking of cryogenic freezing, Demolition Man, completely underrated film. I just want to put that out there. Where's the reboot of Demolition Man? We're going to reboot some good movies from the 90s that we could clean up and maybe make them a little bit more, dark and interesting. Let's do Demolition Man. Sign the petition. It's in the comments below.
Bring Sly back. I want the original cast back. Come on. Dennis Leary. I mean, it was actually a quietly, really good cast.
Oh, great. One of Sandra Bullock's first movies, too. Demolition Man. If you haven't seen it, kids, Demolition Man.
Benjamin Bratt.
Benjamin Bratt, too. Yeah, that's right. Look at that.
I know. Hey. Movies I've actually seen, Joey.
DBRO right there. Look at him. All right, let's get to the running backs out there who might still be floating around the waiver wire. Before we do, obviously, this past week was a roller coaster in the NFL, and that roller coaster is going to keep going on and keep making you sick sometimes, but also incredibly thrilling. And it promises to be a month full of tricks, treats, and of course, touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is the number one place to bet your touchdowns. If you're running it in from the 1 yard line or just doing that Philly tush push like Jalen Hurts, you're throwing big bombs to Cedric Tillman late in games, you got to bet those TDs over at DraftKings, because I did. I won some money on Cedric Tillman on the touchdowns and on the over. How you doing? So if you want to get with us here and start making some money on some of these touchdowns, score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use that promo code FantasyPros. That's FantasyPros for new customers. You get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. All right, gentlemen, the running back streets are not super interesting to me this week. I'll be honest with you. I did speculate on Dalvin Cook over the weekend just because I have a morbid curiosity in deeper leagues and the way running backs are dropping like flies. His roster percentage shot up after the Saturday news that he was going to be elevated all the way to 28% now, so almost 30% rostered already. Rico Dowdle had that last-minute illness. That was annoying and frustrating. So, Pat, Dalvin Cook, it might be more of a deeper league kind of stash here. We all thought that he kind of looked like he was done the last time we saw him with the Jets. What's your evaluation of Cook at this point?
Zero interest. I think he's toast. Okay. And we saw it last year. He averaged, 3.2 yards per carry in his stint for the Ravens. He's 29. He played under 30% of the snaps after being activated this week. Kind of took a backseat to Ezekiel Elliott. Not sure what's up with Rico Dowdle. That was kind of a mysterious scratch. Got to the stadium and reportedly didn't feel well. You wonder if that's entirely illness or if there's something going on behind the scenes. But man, even if Rico were to not be in that picture, I don't think I could generate any real enthusiasm for Dalvin Cook.
That's really interesting. I didn't even think about that. That was a fun little tinfoil hat moment. Did you pick that up from Aaron Rodgers about that? He was pouting because Cook got elevated. You think so?
I don't know what the justification was weird for it. It's not like Rico Dowdle has been crushing. He's been okay. But, they've at times said we heard Mike McCarthy saying a few weeks ago they wanted to get Rico the ball more. And it seems like they've kind of been doing that. So I'm not sure. I mean, I don't want to put on the tinfoil hat. I mean, maybe he was just sick. We saw this happen with Debo, in week 7. So,
guys travel, they pick up stuff, sickness is sickness. Food poisoning, who knows what's going on there. Dalvin Cook, any interest for you? DBRO, as you're looking at this landscape at RB?
No. All right. Dalvin Cook is like gas station sushi. I want no part of it.
All right. Kimani Vidal is a guy that we were adding last week, 23% roster, just again, speculative. He's not increasing much workload like we hoped. He still feels like that insurance policy, but it's hard to get super excited about him. So I don't spend too much time because we talked about him last week. But Jaylen Warren is another one that I want to talk about. We thought this roster percentage would have gone up by now. It's only at 46. Now, he plays tonight on Monday Night Football, and we watch the live streams because if something happens there, we'll give you the evaluation. If, God forbid, an injury to Najee Harris, what that could potentially mean for Jaylen Warren. But, DBRO, when we're looking at Jaylen Warren and his upside here going forward, rest of season, I know we kind of all like to collectively think of him as the more explosive back and all that. We saw against the Jets, 12 carries for 44. He also had 3 targets, caught 2 balls for 15. I'm just still shocked that the roster percentage is as low as it is, just on principle. Are you?
Yeah, he should be in the 60s and 70s. I mean, I'm kind of just double checking this roster percentage because it doesn't make any sense to me, man. Like, I understand, and maybe part of this is, he's been hurt and stuff like that, and people are rostering other backups like Roshan Johnsons of the world over Jaylen Warren. And if that's the case, I get it. He still should be rostered in more leagues. I mean, the other part about this is too, fantastic rushing matchup versus the Giants. We'll see what he does there, but then they get the Commanders next week. So, I mean, you look at the upcoming schedule for them. Okay, the Commanders, you could run on them. The Baltimore Ravens, okay, that's scary. But then the Browns, the Bengals, the Browns, the Eagles, like, you can run on all those teams. So Jaylen Warren is a decent flex play moving forward. If he gets in the end zone tonight, or if he gets in the end zone any one of those games, you're probably talking about a strong RB3, maybe low-end RB2 production if he's going to get 12 to 14 opportunities in a lot of different games.
This might be hyper-specific here, but for those people who get to the show very early as it comes out on Monday, let's say you have Devin Singletary, whose rushing prop tonight, I just did a video on Betting Pros, is going to be 31.5, and I took the under. Right, I'm taking the under against the Steelers. They're one of the best teams against the run in the NFL. Don't like the crowded backfield. Don't like any of those things. Would you pull that move off? Would you drop Devin Singletary specifically and add Jaylen Warren? Again, it's a very hyper-specific situation, but if you're in a league where you have Singletary, Warren's out there, you could pick him up for free right now and make that swap before using Fab. That seems like a smart move to me.
Yep, I would do that in a heartbeat. I would definitely do that. And I think there's a few different guys. Like, would I drop Austin Eckler to pick up Jaylen Warren? Yep. So a lot of different RB3s. I would drop them and pick up Warren. I think better days are ahead for him because I don't think we've still seen a fully healthy version of Jaylen Warren at all this season. No. We get that down the stretch, he's going to play more.
All right, Pat, give me your 2 cents on Jaylen Warren, or even a nickel if you have the time.
Yeah, I do think he's worth picking up. And here's the thing. You might be able to get him at a discount if he does not go off in this game against the Giants because he will be on bye himself. The Steelers are off in week 9. So not a lot of people are anxious to bid on someone who's not going to be able to be in their lineup right away. But it's good to plan ahead these next few weeks because we only have 2 teams on bye in week 9, but then in weeks 10 and 11, 4 teams, and in week 12, 6 teams. And people are really going to be stretched as far as roster depth in those weeks. Jaylen Warren walked in from his knee injury in week 7 and only played 5 fewer snaps than Najee Harris in an offense that is extremely running back centric. I think the Steelers have run the ball at the 2nd highest rate in the league, or at least that was the case coming into week 8, I think behind only the Eagles. And I do think with Russell Wilson at quarterback, they're going to we're probably going to see more targets to the running backs than we did with Justin Fields. We know mobile quarterbacks tend not to check it down to their backs that much. I think Russell Wilson will check it down to his backs. So Warren is a pretty valuable property as a guy who could have something close to a 50-50 backfield share in a very run-heavy offense.
I'll tell you what, Pat, also, you mentioned about picking up guys that are going to be on bye weeks this week coming up. Maybe you can get them cheaper. 100% makes, especially if they have a lead on the Giants and a lot more Najee Harris and they're not throwing a lot to Jaylen Warren. Maybe this is just kind of a cakewalk game for the Steelers. That'd be great to get him a discount. I want to be proactive. You can add him tonight if you can and save yourself the trouble. Also, in that note too, the 49ers have a bye next week. Isaac Guerendo was a guy that saw time last night because Mason came out with an injury, but we also have the looming week 10 return of Christian McCaffrey. Is Guerendo a guy for you worth stashing too, or are you hard pass because you just don't know the health of Mason or McCaffrey by the time we get to week 10?
I think he's more valuable to the stakeholders in Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason than he is to fantasy managers at large. So yeah, like just in case we think McCaffrey is going to practice during the bye week and return in week 10. We don't know the severity of Jordan Mason's shoulder injury as of now, but if you want to safeguard against neither of those 2 guys being ready to go come week 10, Isaac Guerendo makes sense as a sort of an insurance play. Probably not a guy you're dumping 15% of your fab on, but maybe a guy you want to throw a few bucks at if you have the roster space.
Sean Tucker, another guy. I think that DBRO at this point, you want to drop Sean Tucker. I mean, Rashod White looked pretty good. Bucky Irving, we kind of know what his role is going to be. Is that another guy we can jettison to make some room for a guy like a Jaylen Warren or even a Guerendo if you have Mason or CMC?
Yeah, I dropped Sean Tucker, no problem. I mean, he's definitely the third wheel and kind of on the outside looking into this backfield.
All right, I wanted to touch on this before we move over to the wide receivers too, because as easy as it was to add Tillman this week as the huge performance, 2 touchdowns, there was another performance that I really think, and it's very rare, it's a non-running back or wide receiver that we make the waiver wire pick up of the week. Sometimes it's for fun because the guy has a big splash game. But other times, I think it's more of an astute look into the future. This week, the QB5, again, we got 1 game left, but the QB5 was Matthew Stafford, who threw for 279 and 4 touchdowns on Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings defense. That was very good. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about this. I know we're going to touch on it a little bit later, but he's got Cooper Kupp back. He's got Puka Nacua back. If you're looking at the Jordan Love situation, right? Jordan Love got hurt. He's probably going to miss a week, maybe 2. Who knows? Some of the other quarterbacks have been underwhelming. It's not a terrible bye week for quarterbacks. Russell Wilson and Brock Purdy in single QB leagues. I don't know where you're at with those guys. But to me, I'm looking ahead. And DBRO, I think Matthew Stafford is another one of these guys. As you start to look where you have bipocalypse weeks coming, like week 12 and 14, I'd be wanting to add Matthew Stafford now for a little bit of QB insurance for some of those weeks. What do you think about that?
I love it. He's going to make my top 5 pickups of the week, man. Wrote him up very, very strong. I mean, look, the other part about it is not only does Stafford get all of his weapons back, but the schedule is opening up for him too. Seattle, they should shred this week. Miami, okay, tough matchup. Your New England Patriots, Joey, are not good defending the pass. Aaron Rodgers notwithstanding.
You could have stopped with not good. You just could have stopped there.
Well,
not good.
Per Gerard Mayo, they're kind of soft. So, but anyway,
they were good enough. They were good enough.
Good enough to beat the Jets is a very low bar these days. But anyway, then they get the Eagles, then they get the Saints. So the schedule is very good for Matthew Stafford in these next 4 to 5 weeks to be a streamer. He's going to be on the fringe of that QB1 territory. I mean, I don't think this was just a flash in the pan of him throwing 4 touchdowns, because the other thing about it, he did that versus a Vikings secondary, which has been, or defense just in general, which has been very, very good. Now you put him up against these other ones that have been shredded by lesser quarterbacks. Yeah, love Stafford this week.
What are your thoughts on Stafford here real quick, Pat? I want to get yours also, because this does feel like, as you start to look ahead, week 10, so the Love injury, then they have the bye, right? That's another guy. Geno's going to be out week 10. Week 11, you're going to miss Baker Mayfield. You're going to miss Kyler Murray. When you get to 12, that's the Josh Allens and the Joe Burrows. Like that's the Kirk Cousins. That's going to be a really tough week. Same thing with 14. You're missing Stroud. You're missing, we have potentially also Lamar Jackson there too. Week 14 also, and Jaden Daniels, right? All these guys are going to be out for week 14. It seems like maybe like the smart thing to do is to look ahead and say, you know what, maybe stash Stafford right now and try to get those W's, because those bye weeks, in particular 12 and 14, are going to be ruthless on Fab and on your rosters, and starting to look ahead for some of those and trying to kind of get your ducks in a row, at least theoretically, might serve you well and get you that W that you need to maybe break a tie to get in the playoffs.
I'm with you guys. The old general is going to be dangerous again now that he has his soldiers back. And late, low end QB1, high end QB2 is probably where he's going to be ranked most weeks. And, he's got kind of an easy job now with Puka and Kupp back in the fold. Just throw those short little passes to those guys, let them do their damage after the catch, and watch the numbers accrue. So, I do think Stafford is a worthwhile addition to anyone who's kind of struggling at quarterback.
All right, let's move on to the wide receivers. Before we do, don't forget, if you want to get to an NFL game yourself and obviously, try to distract a Bears cornerback from his job at any given time, the best way to do it is to use the Game Time app. That's right. Download the Game Time app. Be there live in the building to witness all of the moments of NFL, college football, or even Major League Baseball still. We've also got NBA, NHL, everything going on right now this time of year. And Game Time app, it's not just sports too. It's concerts, it's comedy events, it's everything. So you pick an upcoming game on the app, you browse through the seats on Game Time picks, and obviously you can check out all the amazing deals. The app tells you exactly and shows you where your seats are, what the view is going to be, which you got to love as well. All the pricing is all in too. Those extra fees and nonsense, that's what really kind of crushes you when it comes to buying tickets. So Game Time eliminates all that stress and makes it easier for you to get to the events that matter to you. So Right now, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that promo code FantasyPros to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code FantasyPros, FANTASYPROS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. It's also time to add some wide receivers. Just due diligence here. In Yahoo leagues, Keon Coleman is still just 41% rostered. Like if you're in a Yahoo league, what are you doing? Like go pick this guy up. I mean, it's crazy. Sterling Shepard just 13% rostered. Now, like that was a lot higher on Sleeper and some other spots. DBRO, you had some thoughts you wanted to share on Shepard.
Yeah, man, I think I know people are going to look at his box score, and I want to give some context to this. He got hurt during the game, came back, and I know we were all like, okay, who's the Bucs wide receiver we need to be picking up? And we talked about Cade Otton and all this, and the running backs popped off. But if Shepard is good to go this week, I think people need to disregard this bad box score in week 8. Kansas City has been getting shredded by slot wide receivers. Their overall pass defense is good. They are bottom 5 against slot wide receivers, and Shepard this last week, 60% in the slot. So if he's good to go this week, I'm going to rank him aggressively on Fantasy Pros for week 9.
All right, let's move on to Ricky Pearsall, 54% rostered, again, kind of on that fringe. Pat, this is another guy that's going to be on the waiver wire through the bye week too. Lots of uncertainty with this wide receiver group right now, a lot of injuries, a lot of unknown when it comes to 49ers. So how do you approach Pearsall because all of those unknowns make it really tough to bid on him?
If I have roster space, I would like to have him on my roster. I don't think I would ever play him in a week where both Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings were healthy, because the number 3 receiver in San Francisco probably has less value than the number 3 receiver elsewhere, just because they like to play a fullback so often. Kyle Juszczyk takes snaps away from the number 3 receiver. Eric Seibert, the number 2 tight end, takes snaps away from the number 3 receiver. But Deebo tends to get dinged up a lot, and Juwan Jennings isn't fully healthy right now. So I do think Ricky Pearsall is worth rostering, and he's playable if either Samuel or Jennings were to be out in any given week.
All right. Your thoughts, DBRO, on Pearsall? Anything to add to that?
No, I mean, I agree with everything Pat kind of laid out there. I think the big thing for him, if we didn't have the bye week, I'd be much more interested in adding him, because I don't know if Jennings would be back, like if they had a game this upcoming week. But considering another week off the bye, I do project that Jennings is probably back, which pushes Pearsall to number 4 in the target pecking order, which basically is relative obscurity for the 49ers.
All right. Elijah Moore still rostering just 7% of leagues. Another guy there if you are looking for some more wide receiver help, perhaps. I still think it's Tillman and then everybody else by a wide margin. Jalen Tolbert, 35% roster. Another guy we keep talking about that I just feel like over time. But I think we have to talk about this kind of the bigger picture here with the Dallas Cowboys. Pat, at this stage with the Cowboys and this offense and what's happening here, the frustration level is real. I thought, and I had them on the money line because I thought they can go in there, and they were winning at halftime. They had the opportunity to kind of get back into relevancy, and they let it slip through their fingers. What happens here for the last 8-9 games for the Dallas Cowboys and this team? Do they unravel here, and does Mike McCarthy eventually unravel with it?
I would be pretty surprised if Mike McCarthy were coaching the Dallas Cowboys in 2025, Joe. Frankly, I'm a little surprised he's coaching them in 2024. As someone who's, experienced the Mike McCarthy show before, although he did deliver the Packers a Super Bowl, so I shouldn't speak too ill of him. But I know, as for Tolbert, I drafted a lot of Brandon Cooks in best ball in the offseason, and I think I was guilty of overestimating the impact of the number 3 pass catcher in Dallas. It's just a lot of hyper targeting of CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson in this offense. So a few weeks ago, I was optimistic that Tolbert might have some value when Brandon Cooks was injured. Not so much anymore. I think he'd be playable maybe only in the deepest of leagues.
All right, let's move on to some other guys that are still out there too. Rashod Bateman, 2 weeks ago, huge output. We kind of talked about, just be careful here. It's not exactly something we want to chase. And it does feel like, once again, he had some big targets, missed one right in his chest. Like that was certainly a big moment there. Lamar, to his credit, he put the ball on a couple of guys, and those guys did not come away with the ball. Is Rashod Bateman a trap, Derek, in terms of throwing fab at, or is that actually a player you want to have on your roster?
I mean, I think he's going to be a trap because he's going to remain volatile. His role in this offense is not a high volume role. His role in this offense is he's the field stretcher. So in the games where Lamar is going to go downfield, yeah, he could pop off for big games. But I mean, even this last week, Zay Flowers dinged up. Cleveland Browns are not good. I mean, they're not terrible, but they're not especially good versus deep passing. He did nothing. And so, again, it's a guy that deserves to be out there on the waiver wire and not on your rosters because you could probably pick him up whenever that matchup does present itself and they face a team that is bad versus deep passing. You want to roll the dice on that week? Sure. But do I want to roster him consistently week in and week out, knowing the volatility?
Some injuries are going to make some opportunities this week coming up for some wide receivers too. Christian Kirk, collarbone injury, he's out for the year. I don't know if there's anybody in Jacksonville you want to chase. So, I mean, it seems like it's hopefully Brian Thomas comes back and, more Evan Ingram. So if somebody dropped Ingram and he's floating around there. Also, Stephon Diggs with that non-contact injury. We're waiting for a definitive word on that. But I think all of us would be shocked if he was playing anytime soon. That being said, John Mechie, maybe in a PPR league in the short week, because Pat, it is a short week for the Texans. They're playing Thursday night. So it's kind of all hands on decks because Nico is not going to be ready by the time we get to Thursday Night Football. We're going to have to wait another week. So what are your thoughts on the Jags and Texans in terms of anybody want to throw some darts on for some streamers this week?
Man, not real interested in Parker Washington, Tim Jones, John Mechie, Xavier
Robert
Hutchinson.
Woods.
Yeah, Robert Woods. It's just, it's hard to see any of those guys being clearly the lead receiver. In the absence of these other guys. And we know Tank Dell is still healthy for the Texans, so he's probably going to be hyper targeted in the weeks to come until Nico is back. I'm not really interested in chasing one of these guys. I think probably despite their enhanced roles in their respective passing games, I can't imagine having Mechie, Parker Washington, whoever ranked inside my top 40 or 50 at wide receiver this week.
T-Bro, when you're looking at those situations, anybody stand out to you?
I think the biggest beneficiary they want to highlight here, and I don't want to say this is a true Cade Otton kind of experience, but I think Dalton Schultz gets a big bump. With all these injuries, you're still catching passes from freaking CJ Stroud. Going up against the Jets secondary, you avoid the corners, throw to the running backs, throw to the tight ends. So I think Schultz gets a big bump this next week or two until Nico comes back. So
you crushed
I'll
that,
probably be ranking him as a top 15 guy.
On the live stream on Sunday, you crushed the Cade Otton stuff, man. You talked about it. And he might even be flex worthy, I think, going forward. Forget even tight end. Depending on these situations and the buys, and even next week, you're missing Kittle, you're missing Freiermuth, right? So if he is still out there, which I don't think he should be, but he might be in some leagues, but you're in a situation where he might even be flex worthy depending on what teams and what players are available to you. Speaking of availability, maybe time to make some room for some of the other guys. Jordan Whittington, Quentin Johnston, are those two guys droppable, D-Bro?
Easy. Buy and buy.
Pat, we had some moments here with these guys, but certainly nothing lately worthy of holding. Would you agree?
Yeah, no value to Whittington with Kupp and Nakua around, and Quentin Johnston I had hopes for. The Chargers just don't pass enough for anyone other than it looks like Ladd McConkey to have value.
All right, let's get to the streamers for week 9. Let's start with the QBs. Derek Brown, kick us off. Who do you want to stream a QB for this week?
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and own this. I snuck into the outline really quickly before Pat was still doing all the due diligence and getting the waiver wire article. And I was like, I'm going to get in here and get the sleepers. So just owning that right now. But Matthew Stafford, man, I mean, he's the low-hanging fruit, the guy that I had to mention here going against Seattle. Seattle's been a bottom 5 pass defense. Just let Stafford cook this week.
All right, Pat, give me a quarterback for week 9.
It would be Stafford, but it's going to be Jameis Winston for me. And I know D-Bro is out here like the boogeyman trying to scare us about all these tough matchups the Chargers have coming, or the Browns have coming up. I don't care. Jameis Winston doesn't care. He's just going to throw it into coverage no matter how tight the coverage is. He could be facing the 85 Bears, the 2000 Ravens. He's going to keep slinging it. Doesn't matter. Jameis Winston, probably good for 40-plus pass attempts against the Chargers this week.
Reckless abandon, baby. Do you think, Pat, he knew what he was saying? He did it as a joke to lighten everybody up about the names on the helmet? Or do you think he really just was like, oh, wait, oops? But
I think
what do you think?
I think that was,
I think it was an oops.
pretty much spur of the moment. Yeah, Jameis. I don't think Jameis like plans his pregame speeches.
Yeah, well, his post-game speech was equally fascinating. By the way,
Jameis is so much fun, man.
He is, you know what? He's good TV. I'll give him that. No matter
Jamal
what
Williams
it is,
of quarterbacks. It's always tons of quotables.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's go on to the streaming tight ends for the week. Fitzy, who do you have?
How about Taysom Hill? So it's largely matchup based, going against the Panthers this week. The Panthers have the worst run defense in the league, and we can probably bet on Taysom Hill continuing to get a steady diet of usage, because right now the Saints are trying to hide their quarterback. Maybe Derek Carr's back, but like we've seen Hill get used his usage has been okay even when Derek Carr has played. So I like Hill going up against a bad run defense.
All right. DBRO, give me a tight end we can stream for this week.
Noah Fant, baby, other side of the game. And this is with or without DK Metcalf healthy. The Rams have been abysmal versus tight ends. They're allowing the third most receiving yards and the most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. So Noah Fant, stream him this week.
All right. A defense to stream in week 9, Derek Brown. Who would that be?
Well, just roll anybody versus the Raiders. Oh, look at that. It's the Bengals this week. Yes, we're playing the Bengals.
Let me tell you, that Bengals defense tough, man. They really need to get some help there. It seems like every year they have like this one giant deficit that just looms in their face, and they just can't get past it. Offensive line, they finally get that right, and then they lose all the Bateses of the world, the secondary players, and then they stink there. They just can't stay consistent on any level. All right, Fitzy, give me a defense you want to stream this week.
Yeah, so just as DBRO was touting a not stellar defense, I'm going to do the same. It's a really tough week for streaming defenses because all the widely available defenses, like the bad defenses, have the best matchups. So that's kind of the case with the Washington Commanders going against the New York Giants. Maybe it'll be better for the Giants against Pittsburgh tonight, although I really doubt it. But we saw the Giants completely unable to move the ball. I think they had like 119 yards of offense or something really anemic against the Eagles 2 weeks ago. The loss of left tackle Andrew Thomas has just crushed this offense. Like they just cannot handle pass rush. So I think Washington might be able to get to Daniel Jones, who has occasionally been known to give the ball up on a fumble or an interception from time to time. So Washington against the Giants next week. Washington only 12% rostered.
All right, boys, give us a kicker that we could play in week 9. Pat, who do you have?
Well, DBRO might have snaked me on kicker again. So hold
on. 100% truth here. I only picked him because you keep bringing him up, and apparently nobody's listening. Like I'm just trying to breathe the truth, Pat. Okay, I'm just bringing the truth. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll go back to my corner.
I will go with Will Reichard of the Vikings, who has not missed a kick yet this year. Perfect 14 of 14 on field goals, 20 of 20 on extra points.
All right. Anything else to add here for kickers, Derek Brown?
I'm sorry, Patty. I just didn't want you to have to say Austin Seibert's name yet again. I mean, this is like 7 weeks, 8 weeks in a row, man. So I'll bring him up.
Percentage now.
He's up almost to 50% on Yahoo.
Almost to 50. But it's still
I'm going to make a rule.
Kicker
Everybody
one
should have already picked this guy up. If you haven't, or like next week, no more Seibert. That's it. I put my foot down.
Bringing him up because people need to hear it.
It's fine. I'm not doing it anymore. All right, let's get to the top waiver wire ads for the week. You're 1 through 5. Let's rank them. Pat, let's start with you. Who are the top 5 ads for week 9 in the NFL?
Yeah, Cedric Tillman is number 1 with a bullet by a wide margin. I like Jaylen Warren at number 2. Matthew Stafford, who we talked about, at number 3. Keon Coleman at number 4. Like, I know the target outlook for him is going to be dicey week to week now that they've got Amari Cooper. They still have Khalil Shakir, but we saw why this guy was such an exciting prospect. His ball skills are phenomenal, and he makes big plays. And at number 5, Kimani Vidal, just because of his potential value on a run-heavy team playing behind a running back who has already, ripped up his knee and torn his Achilles in the past.
All right, let's get to your top 5, Derek Brown, for week 9. What do you have for the people?
Cedric Tillman, easy runaway number 1. Keon Coleman coming in at number 2 for me. Again, 2 weeks in a row. Matthew Stafford, number 3. Jaylen Warren, 4. And I'm going to get Noah Fant because I know the tight end streets are bleak in at number 5.
Okay, so there you have it. Those are the top 5 ads, the waiver wire ad of the week, the traps, everything you need to know in the waiver wire. But if you need more, of course, sync your leagues to My Playbook. Download My Playbook wherever you get your apps from, or go to fantasypros.com/myplaybook and use the waiver assistant. And don't forget, over at fantasypros.com, we've got all the waiver wire ranks and the articles, all the content you could possibly absorb. So go be a sponge, absorb it all, and make sure you're getting the right players on your rosters for the stretch run as we try to head closer and closer to that fantasy championship. Great stuff as always, boys. That'll do it for us. But the story of the game goes on. For Pat Fitzmaurice and Derek Brown, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.